Allies say Keir Starmer spent the summer pondering why his government hasn't achieved more. Today he announced one part of what he hopes is the solution. A new team in number 10 who can get the machinery of government delivering more.
I'm not angry, I'm frustrated. I get the frustration and anger of voters because they want change. I mean, for a very long time, most people feel that their living standards haven't gone up, their public services aren't what they deserve, and they're not really getting back what they are putting in. So I want to deliver that change as quickly as possible. Today is about moving on to that second phase. As I say, delivery is the absolute key word, and that's why I'm really pleased with the changes today.
Darren Jones will oversee Keir Starmer's day-to-day work in a newly invented job, Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, chasing other ministers' progress. The economist and peer Manoush Shafiq will become Keir Starmer's economic advisor. And public relations consultant Tim Allen, who first worked for Tony Blair 33 years ago, joins as Executive Director of Communications. Darren Jones' appointment is the biggest innovation, a minister explicitly working directly to the Prime Minister to chase progress on his priorities. Darren Jones is also going to be deployed on TV and radio, where number 10 think he's an unflappable media performer.
One source telling a Sunday newspaper, if you want a glimpse into the dystopian AI future where the world is run by autocratic robots devoid of any emotional humanity, then you need to spend 5 minutes in a meeting with Darren Jones.
Well, nice to be with you. I'll be as emotion-filled and creative as possible to distinguish myself from an AI system.
That jibe was prompted by Darren Jones' time controlling spending as a Treasury Minister. These and other recent changes are intended to increase economic expertise inside number 10, after what Keir Starmer's allies admit have been a series of missteps in government economic policy.
I think we're simply looking at a Prime Minister who feels that he's underserved in terms of the experience and expertise that he's got independently of the Treasury, so that he's in a position actually to have probably just a more intelligent conversation with the Chancellor. And let's hope it works like that. If you end up with an antagonistic relationship between Treasury advisors and number 10 advisors, then the government can start heading into trouble.
Chasing progress on small boats will be amongst Darren Jones' responsibilities. After an August of Reform UK-generated headlines attacking government policy, Home Secretary today announced she'd temporarily suspend new refugees' applications for family reunion, pending a complete rewrite of the rules.
The Home Secretary.
Yvette Cooper told the Commons refugees used to wait a year or two before trying to get their families into Britain, but that had changed.
Here in the UK now, however, those applications come in on average in around a month after protection has been granted, often even before a newly granted refugee has left asylum accommodation. As a consequence, refugee families who arrive are far more likely to be seeking homelessness assistance. And some councils are finding that more than a quarter of their family homelessness applications are linked to refugee family reunion. That is not sustainable.
There's been a vacuum for a few weeks where Nigel Farage and Reform UK were able to seize the narrative around small boats and asylum hotels, and the government was absent. What we got today was essentially a restatement of everything they've done, plus a slightly new announcement around family members of refugees. So they need to go further. It doesn't just stop today. It needs to be more announcements over the coming days.
Responding to recent asylum hotel protests, Keir Starmer told the BBC he hoped to close all asylum hotels even earlier than his 2029 deadline.
We've got the St George's flag in our flat.
Keir Starmer said he liked flags, but disapproved of those who devalue and belittle the flag by using it to divide society.
So let's take a closer look at the government's tightening of asylum rules. Let's say a couple with a young child want to seek asylum in the UK. If all three come here at the same time, they can claim asylum together, with one person, most often the husband, as the main applicant and his wife and child applying as dependents. Or, under the current system, the husband might arrive in Britain alone, leaving his family in his home country. And if the government agrees that he's at risk of persecution and he's granted refugee status, his wife and child can apply for refugee family reunion visas and eventually join him in the UK. And it's this second group of people that the government is targeting today. And the Home Secretary says she will temporarily suspend new applications for family reunion visas, and the Home Office will look at tightening these rules in future. So, how many people would be affected? Well, experts at the Oxford Migration Observatory estimate that about 1 in 5 adult refugees, that's people the government agrees are at risk of persecution, will end up bringing family members to Britain through reunion visas. So how many people will actually be put off crossing the channel then? Well, those Oxford experts told us family reunion rules are likely one of the most important factors when people are choosing where to migrate to. But they point out that any deterrent would only apply to the minority of asylum seekers who have partners and children, and it might just encourage families to arrive all together rather than sending one family member ahead. The government says it remains committed to supporting refugee families, but it's not the first European country to tighten rules on family reunification. Both Germany and Austria and others have taken steps to curb the rights of those granted temporary asylum being joined by their families. Krish.
Well, earlier I spoke to the Women and Equalities Minister, Baroness Jackie Smith, who was out promoting the expansion of free childcare to 30 hours a week for working parents during term time. And I began by asking her why she thinks Keir Starmer and the government are so unpopular right now.
We've actually had to do a lot of work to fix the foundations that we discovered when we came into government, but we also understand that the British people expect to be seeing even more of a difference in the money that is in their pockets, in the way in which the NHS is improving, the way in which we're securing our borders. And we've really got to shift into delivery mode and demonstrating to people that we're delivering on that. You know, just today we've been announcing in the Department for Education the delivery of 30 hours free childcare.
And that was a Tory policy.
Well, it was a Tory plan. It had absolutely it was a Tory pledge. It had absolutely no plan around it as to how it was going to be delivered.
But this is the problem. I mean, you can list off a load of things that you've done in the last 12 months, but they're not being felt. And that's why you're doing so badly in the opinion polls. And that's why you've lost control of the agenda. I mean, how is it that a year into government, you can't control the agenda?
To be fair, you know, today we're talking about the difference in childcare provision that is going to make a big difference to families and to the children that need that.
The Home Secretary's big announcement is about ending the right to family life for refugees.
No, what the Home Secretary was doing in Parliament today, as is appropriate when you come back to Parliament after a recess, was to update on what has been happening. She was able to talk about the agreement that we've signed with France, where we've already detained people who will be going back to France in the next few weeks. We've already identified those who will be able to come through.
But you know, on that French policy, which you're pinning a lot of hope on, I know, the numbers, again, just don't stack up. You know, you're sending a very, very small number of people back, and every day more and more people are coming in.
The French agreement, which of course was never able to be made by the last government, is, I think, an important step forward, and we will build on it. But that's not the only thing that's happened over the last year. You know, one of the big problems that was attracting people into the country was a failure to make decisions about asylum claims quickly and a failure to be able to return people. We've increased the number of asylum decisions being made. After the last government had shockingly frozen that. We've increased by 35,000 the numbers of people.
That's true, but you spoke about smashing the gangs in the run-up to the election, and you haven't done that.
If your charge, Christian, is that there's more that we need to do, that is of course true.
No, my charge is that you didn't smash the gangs, which is what you said you would do.
Well, it's what we said we would do over the course of this Parliament. Yes, it is frustrating that we have not managed to stop people being so desperate that they fall into the hands of the criminals who have been able to get an absolute foothold in this area. But we have been making the changes in the ways in which I've been talking about.
You know about the importance of today's announcement. This concerns about 20,000 people a year, overwhelmingly women and children, who will now not be given visas to join their family members in Britain. When did refugees lose the right to a family life?
It's enormously important that we maintain our position as a country, welcoming people. But what we're also seeing is some of the pull factors that are being used by criminals to encourage people to risk their lives on boats coming across the channel. And one of those is the suggestion that you can arrive in the UK, you can become a refugee, and you can immediately bring your family. And what was happening?
So what you're saying is, yes, real refugees who have a real fear of persecution will no longer be able to do that.
6 years ago, on average, people were taking about 18 months after having their decisions made to apply to bring their families. A period of time in which they could have got housing, they could have got a job, they could be prepared for their family to come. That's now down to about a month. So what the Home Secretary is saying is, look, we need to look at the whole of that system. Of course we need to have a system which recognises the right for families to come to be with those who have come here and got refugee status. Of course that's important to people in this country,
but
which
why
we have
does
always
Ukraine
been
get
proud
different
to do.
treatment? I mean, if you're a Ukrainian, you get a visa. If you're a Palestinian or a Sudanese person being persecuted in war, there's no route, in fact. There's no safe route to come from Sudan, is there?
There is a particular route for Ukrainians,
Yeah.
which we've been proud
So why do they get special treatment?
Well, I think that Yvette Cooper and the Home Office will want to look at other ways in which we can provide that sort of safe route. There already are those particular schemes that I've outlined, and we'll want to find other ways to do that.
How long before you start panicking? I mean, if you look at where you are in the polls, and you know what it looks like we're heading towards at the next election, at what point do you think you look at this and go, we can't carry on like this?
We're not panicking, Krishnan. We are continuing to take the action at a really difficult time, having come into government at a difficult time, to make changes to the lives of British people.
Jackie Smith, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, with me now to discuss the health of the government some more is Peter Hyman, a former advisor to Keir Starmer and Tony Blair, and author of a new Substack called Changing the Story, which begins with a look at what Labour needs to do to get back on track this autumn. And you've got a sort of 5-point plan, and the uncharitable way of reading it would be the problem is Starmer. He doesn't know what he's doing, he doesn't know how to communicate it, he's not in touch with what he really thinks.
Well, I don't think that's right, but what I do think is needed is a real sense of strategy and purpose. Let's start with Keir himself. I think he's been forced to be a security prime minister when actually he comes alive as an opportunity one. When you see him with young people, when you see him talking about breaking down the barriers to opportunity, when you see him talking about his life story, working class, made good, he really comes alive, and yet he hasn't shown that side of him enough. Now, obviously, events in the world make you more involved in security, but the way of actually beating reform is to neutralise the security issues and then play on the opportunity issues, which Farage and Reform are very weak on.
So you think they're right to keep going on about immigration, even though, you know, that's
I don't think they should keep going. It's not about keep going and for the sake of it. And I don't like this idea that if you want to stop the boats, you're chasing reform. There's a first duty of government to know who's coming in the country. So I distinguish the boats issue and the sense of lack of control on the borders with a wider immigration issue. There should be a principle that Britain takes asylum seekers, but you need orderly routes, you need legal routes, you need fair routes to do that. But boats have to be stopped. And what I'm also saying in that Substack is it's got to be taken more seriously. It's a sort of issue that should be treated like the vaccine task force. Taken out of the Home Office, who I don't have confidence will actually
treat it like a national security emergency.
National security, you have a crack multidisciplinary team, it reports directly to the Prime Minister, it's chased on a daily basis, and then you sort it out. Then you deprive reform of the oxygen of doing so, and you can have a more serious debate about the immigration needs of the country.
Well, I mean, isn't the real problem, though, is that if you do neutralise immigration, then you're left with the real problem, and that's the economy and the lack of money with which to fix anything that's broken.
Yeah, so the other thing we've got to do, and Labour's got to do this autumn, is have a growth strategy, and I'm assuming in the budget there'll be more flesh on that. If we don't get growth, there are real problems. So there needs to be a real sense a real deep thinking about what are the elements of growth, what are the levers to pull that will have most effect on growth,
I mean,
because things are very tight.
How important is the storytelling here then? I mean, he's bringing back in your old colleague Tim Allen
He's
from
very
the
good.
Blair years. I mean, communications can't really fix the problems of the country, can they?
The storytelling is really important because you've got to say what and it's all about ideas as well. You've got to win the battle of ideas. You've got to say what the animating idea of the government is, because then when you make mistakes or when times are difficult, people stick with you because you're telling them a believable story. And it's happened in the past, Thatcher, Blair, when they got into sticky patches, people said, well, actually, I know where they're going. I know what it's for.
But they were natural communicators, weren't they? And that is
well, you can communicate.
Hard to say about Keir Starmer.
Yeah, but you can communicate in different ways, and he's got to find the sort of media, the sort of authentic voice, as I said before, that really gives him that sense of passion, the sense of fighting for working families to improve their lives.
I mean, you say in your article that he should go more on digital media.
Yeah.
I mean, can you really imagine Starmer doing TikTok?
Well, the thing about digital media, and I was speaking to lots of people about this, it's not about, and some people misread this, it's about authenticity. It is surprising who's done well on...
Oh, Farage has done very well on it.
Well, Farage, but in a different way. But if your question is, could someone like Keir Starmer work on TikTok? My belief is if he's authentic, and if he does it in an interesting way and repeats doing it and is visible. At the moment, young people, who I've been speaking to a lot, don't think he's visible. They think Farage is everywhere on social media and Keir's nowhere. And what you've got at number 10 is a legacy media first, and you need to do some of that. But actually getting on the front page of The Guardian is no longer as important as getting into social media and talking to people where they're at and what they're consuming. And that is vital for the left to do really well.